I found the text at exactly 3:17 a.m., that strange hour when even lies seem to glow with brutal honesty. There she was, my stunning 29-year-old fiancée, naked in photos sent to my own flesh and blood. The timestamp showed they were exchanged, just hours after she'd accepted my 2-carat engagement ring. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again," she'd written to my son, while wearing Daddy's diamond. Right then, staring at my sleeping bride-to-be, I understood that my 4th marriage wouldn't be the charm I'd hoped for. It would be my greatest humiliation yet. They say 3rd time's the charm, but in my case, the 3rd divorce was just another expensive lesson. Marriage number 4 was supposed to be different. At 55, I thought I'd finally learned enough to make it work. Turns out, I still had one hell of a lesson coming. My name is Steve Blackwell. In Boston's financial district, people know me as the man who built Blackwell Partners from nothing into a $3.8 billion investment firm. 3 ex-wives know me as the workaholic who prioritized empire building over marriage. And my 32-year-old son, Tyler, apparently knows me as the old fool whose fiancée he's been fucking behind my back. Let me take you back 6 months before I discovered the betrayal that would reshape everything. "Dad, you can't be serious," Tyler said, swirling his scotch with evident disgust. We were sitting in my penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, the city lights creating a false sense of warmth against the February chill. "She's barely older than I am. She's 29, Tyler, hardly a child." I took a sip of my Macallan 25, enjoying the slow burn. "And I don't remember asking for your approval." Tyler set his glass down harder than necessary. "This is your midlife crisis on steroids. The Ferrari wasn't enough? The yacht wasn't enough? Now you need arm candy too?" "Watch yourself," I warned, my voice carrying that edge that made junior partners at my firm suddenly remember urgent appointments. "Vanessa isn't arm candy. She has an MBA from Wharton. She was the youngest executive at Meridian Partners before joining our firm." "Before joining your bed, you mean?" Tyler's bitterness surprised even me. My relationship with my son had always been complicated. I'd left his mother when he was 7 and our connection had suffered accordingly, but he'd never spoken to me with such raw contempt. "That's enough!" I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. "I invited you here as a courtesy. The engagement party is next month. Be there or don't. Your choice." Tyler stood too, now eye to eye with me. Sometimes I forgot he'd grown to my height, inherited my build, my jawline. Looking at him was like seeing a younger version of myself, but with his mother's cutting intelligence behind the eyes. "You'll regret this," he said simply, setting down his unfinished drink. "Some lessons you seem determined to learn the hard way." After he left, I poured another scotch and moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Boston spread out before me, a city I'd conquered, much like I'd conquered everything else I'd set my mind to. Everything except maintaining a marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Missing you. Meeting running late. Don't wait up." I smiled. Vanessa Liu had burst into my life like a supernova 8 months earlier. Initially hired as a senior investment strategist, she'd quickly proven herself brilliant, ambitious, and intoxicatingly confident. Our professional relationship had evolved into dinners discussing market strategies, which evolved into weekend getaways reviewing portfolios, which inevitably led to my proposal 3 weeks ago on a private beach in the Maldives. My previous marriages hadn't lacked for passion initially. Janet, my first wife and David's mother, had been my college sweetheart, a fiery intellectual who grew increasingly resentful of my 100-hour work weeks while she raised our son alone. Marriage number 2 with Rebecca had been the classic trophy wife scenario, a former model who eventually found comfort in prescription pills and her yoga instructor's bed while I built my company. Carolyn, wife number 3, had been the most promising, a successful attorney who understood ambition but ultimately couldn't compete with my first love, Harrington Capital. Vanessa felt different. She matched my drive, understood my world, and still managed to make me feel 20 years younger in and out of the bedroom. She was everything I wanted. Brilliant mind, ambition to match my own, and a body that made grown men walk into traffic when she crossed the street. The engagement party was exactly the grotesque display of wealth you'd expect from a man on his fourth engagement. I'd rented out the top floor of the Mandarin Oriental, flown in a French chef, and made sure every power player in Boston received an invitation. Standing beside Vanessa as she charmed senators and CEOs alike, I felt that peculiar pride of a man who knows he's purchased something others covet. "She's magnificent," whispered Nathan Cooper, my oldest friend and the firm's co-founder. "Maybe this one will stick." I chuckled, watching Vanessa across the room in her crimson Valentino gown. "Fourth time's the charm, right?" "Speaking of charm, your son seems to have plenty tonight." Nathan nodded toward the bar where Tyler stood in animated conversation with Vanessa. "Glad to see he's warming up to her." I watched them with satisfaction. Tyler looked unexpectedly at ease, leaning close to Vanessa as she laughed at something he said. Their earlier hostility apparently forgotten, they clinked champagne flutes before Tyler whispered something in her ear that made her smile in a way that stirred something primal in me. A fleeting, indefinable discomfort that I quickly drowned in another glass of champagne. The weeks that followed were a blur of wedding preparations. Vanessa threw herself into planning with unexpected enthusiasm, insisting on handling most details herself. "You've done this 3 times already," she teased. "Let me have my first big wedding moment." I was grateful for her initiative. Between a major acquisition in Singapore and quarterly earnings reports, I barely had time to breathe, much less select between eggshell and ivory invitations. The rare evenings we spent together usually ended with her exhausted from venue visits or meetings with caterers, though she still managed to maintain our passionate sex life with an enthusiasm that occasionally left me wondering if I should increase my Cialis dosage. Here's what I didn't notice: the increasingly frequent girls' nights that left her phone mysteriously dead until morning. The sudden interest in cryptocurrency that had her attending weekend seminars I later couldn't find evidence of. The fresh perfume on days she'd supposedly been at the office all afternoon. The classic signs were all there, floating just beyond my peripheral vision, obscured by my own vanity and the intoxication of having a beautiful woman 3 decades my junior sharing my bed. What finally pierced my willful blindness wasn't suspicion, it was insomnia. One night, 3 weeks before our planned June wedding, I woke at that cursed hour when the mind refuses rest. Vanessa slept soundly beside me, one bare leg thrown over the covers in the way I found both vulnerable and arousing. Her phone buzzed, with a text on the nightstand. Once, twice, 3 times in succession. I shouldn't have looked. In my previous marriages, I'd always respected privacy, even when I suspected I was being deceived. But something, call it intuition, call it the primal suspicion of an aging man with a young fiancée, made me reach for her phone. The preview on the locked screen showed only, "Tyler, you awake? Tyler, I need to see you tomorrow. Tyler, we need to talk about." Telling him, my heart stopped, then restarted with a painful lurch. Surely David was someone else, a colleague, a cousin, a friend I hadn't met. Using her sleeping face to unlock the phone confirmed my worst suspicions. The full exchange was there in cruel, high-definition clarity, along with hundreds of messages stretching back nearly 8 months, almost to the very beginning of my relationship with Amanda, along with dozens of intimate photos she'd sent him, along with detailed accounts of their encounters, some occurring literally hours after she'd been with me. My hands shook as I scrolled higher, reading backwards through their sordid history. Left meeting early. Dad thinks I'm in conference all afternoon. Your place in 20? Watching him propose was surreal. If he knew where my mouth had been this morning, he's asleep. I can slip out for an hour if you're still up. The ultimate humiliation came when I found their messages from the night of the engagement party. "You looked absolutely fuckable tonight," my son had written. "That red dress nearly gave me a heart attack. Your father said the same thing." She'd replied with a laughing emoji. Though he wasn't bold enough to bend me over in the coat check room like someone I know, I felt physically ill. My own son and my fiancée had been carrying on behind my back, Not just recently, but from the very beginning. The engagement, party where I'd been so pleased to see them getting along, took on a nauseating new context. I looked at Amanda sleeping peacefully beside me, her face angelically innocent in repose. I could wake her now, confront her with the evidence. I could call David, unleash decades of complicated father-son resentment with this fresh betrayal as kindling. Instead, I did something that had made me successful in business. I controlled. My emotions, replaced the phone exactly as I'd found it, and began to plan. What does a man do when he discovers his young fiancée is sleeping with his son? Conventional wisdom suggests confrontation, rage, immediate severance of both relationships. But conventional men don't build billion-dollar empires. Conventional men don't recover from 3 divorces to still believe in love. And conventional men certainly don't plan the kind of elaborate revenge I began orchestrating that sleepless night. For the next 2 weeks, I became the perfect, unsuspecting fiancé. I sent Amanda flowers, approved her increasingly extravagant wedding choices, and apologized for my busy schedule keeping us apart. Each time she made excuses about working, late or weekend commitments, I expressed only understanding. Meanwhile, I hired the most ruthless private investigator in Boston, a former FBI agent named Marlowe, who specialized in high-profile infidelity cases. "You want evidence?" she asked during our discreet meeting in a private room at my club. "Or just confirmation? Everything," I replied, sliding across an envelope with her $50,000 retainer. "Every meeting, every text, every hotel room, and I want to know if anyone else knows about their affair." Marlowe delivered beyond expectation. Within 10 days, I had a comprehensive file documenting their 18 meetings over 3 weeks, including timestamps, locations, and photographs that turned my stomach but confirmed what I needed to know. The pattern was clear. Whenever I traveled or worked late, David and Amanda would rendezvous at his downtown loft or occasionally at boutique hotels. Most damning were the audio recordings Marlowe had somehow obtained from their most recent encounter. "What are we doing, David?" Amanda's voice was breathy, clearly recorded mid-liaison. "The wedding's in 2 weeks." "Getting what we both want," my son replied. "You get his money, I get my revenge, and we both get this." The sound of their lovemaking that followed, her gasps painfully familiar to me, forced me to stop the recording. But I'd heard enough. This wasn't just lust. This was calculated betrayal from both of them. Armed with this knowledge, I modified the prenuptial agreement Amanda had already signed. My attorney was puzzled by the sudden changes, but didn't question the substantial bonus I offered for his discretion and immediate execution of the amendments. 3 days before the wedding, I invited David to my office under the pretense of discussing his trust fund. My son arrived looking smugly confident, accepting my offer of whiskey with a casualness that now seemed like blatant disrespect. "I wanted to discuss your financial future," I began, watching him over the rim of my glass. "Bit late for fatherly concern, isn't it?" There was that bitterness again, the resentment I'd never fully understood until now. Better late than never. I pushed a folder across my desk. "I'm making some changes to my will before the wedding. Thought you should know." He opened it, scanning the documents inside with growing confusion. "You're reducing my inheritance? What the fuck, Dad?" "Not reducing, restructuring." I leaned forward. "You'll get everything I've built, David. Harrington, capital, the properties, the investments, all of it. But only after you complete 10 years as CEO with the company showing growth each quarter." 10 years? He looked up angry and bewildered. "I don't even work for you. That's the point. It's time you learned the business from the inside. Starting Monday, you're the new Executive Vice President of Strategic Development, working directly under me. And if I refuse?" I shrugged. "Then you get nothing except the trust fund you already have. My controlling shares and personal assets would go to Amanda." His face betrayed everything: rage, calculation, and finally grudging acquiescence. "Fine, I'll do it, but not because you're forcing me, because I deserve it anyway. I smiled thinly. Of course. One more thing. I pushed another document. Forward. Your employment contract includes a morality clause. Any inappropriate relationships with other employees results in immediate termination and forfeiture of all inheritance rights. The color drained from his face. What are you saying? Just standard corporate policy. I'm sure it won't be an issue. For you. I stood, signaling our meeting was over. See you at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. The rehearsal dinner at l'Espalier was a masterpiece of uncomfortable theater. I watched David and Amanda carefully maintain appropriate distance, their eyes meeting only briefly across the room. Neither knew what I knew, but both were clearly unsettled by my sudden insistence on bringing Amanda into the business and David's unexpected employment. A toast, I announced, rising to my feet as dessert was served. To new beginnings and family, unity. After tomorrow, David won't just be my son, he'll be my executive vice president and Amanda's stepson. The emphasis I placed on stepson made Amanda's champagne glass tremble slightly. David's jaw tightened as he forced a smile. Later that night, Amanda was uncharacteristically passionate in bed, perhaps compensating for her guilt or simply enjoying what she believed was one of our final encounters before achieving her objective. I performed admirably, all while imagining how different her moans sounded with my son. After she fell asleep, I watched her breathing and contemplated how perfectly she and David had underestimated me. The morning of the wedding arrived with picture-perfect weather, sunny, mild, the Boston Harbor gleaming as if polished for the occasion. The Four Seasons ballroom was transformed into an elegant garden of white orchids and crystal, ready to host the 300 guests who would witness my fourth trip to the altar. Amanda prepared in the presidential suite, surrounded by bridesmaids who knew her even less than I did. I dressed alone in a separate suite, declining my brother's offer to serve as best man. Today's performance required absolute focus. An hour before the ceremony, as guests began arriving, I requested a private moment with my bride-to-be. Her bridesmaids tittered as they exited, leaving us alone with her stunning in a custom Vera Wang gown that had cost more than my first car. "Michael!" she exclaimed with mock scandal. "It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, I think. We make our own luck, don't you?" I approached slowly, admiring how truly beautiful she was, not just physically, but in the perfect construction of her deception. "I wanted to give you something before the ceremony." I presented a small velvet box. Inside was a striking ruby pendant on a platinum chain. "It's gorgeous," she breathed, genuinely moved. "It belonged to my grandmother," I lied smoothly. "She called it her truth stone, claimed it would burn against the skin of anyone telling a lie." Amanda laughed nervously as I moved behind her to fasten it around her neck. "Good thing I'm an honest woman then." "Indeed." I let my fingers linger on her bare shoulders. "There's something powerful about standing at this threshold with you. Fourth marriage for me. First for you. New beginnings." "New beginnings," she echoed, meeting my eyes in the mirror with practiced sincerity. "I should go," I said. "Guests are waiting. I've asked David to escort you down the aisle since your father couldn't be here. A symbol of family unity." Her composure slipped momentarily. "David? But I thought your brother was—" "Last-minute change. Family first, right? See you at the altar, sweetheart." I left her standing there, touching the pendant with trembling fingers. In the hallway, I nodded to Marlowe, who was disguised as hotel staff positioned to record everything that followed. I found David in the lobby bar, already on his second scotch. "Cold feet?" I asked, sitting beside him. "Just celebrating the last moments before my new stepmom officially joins the family," he replied sarcastically. About that, I signaled the bartender for a drink of my own. "I need you to walk Amanda down the aisle." "Absolutely not." It wasn't a request. I kept my voice measured, reasonable. "Unless you want to explain to everyone why you're refusing this simple courtesy." David's knuckles whitened around his glass. "You manipulative bastard. Wonder where you get it from." I smiled without humor. "She's waiting in the presidential suite. Don't keep your future stepmother waiting, son." What happened in that suite was captured with perfect clarity by Marlowe's surveillance. I watched the recording later that night in the same hotel room, alone. David entered without knocking, finding Amanda pacing anxiously. "Did he say anything to you?" she demanded immediately. "Just that I'm walking you down the aisle. What's going on?" "I don't know. He was strange just now. Talking about truth and new beginnings." She touched the ruby pendant. "We need to be careful." David moved closer, his anger at me evidently overwhelming his caution. "This is insane. We should just call it off." "After all we've planned? No fucking way." Amanda's sweet bride veneer vanished, revealing the calculating woman beneath. 2 more years, that's all. Get the inheritance rights transferred, divorce him with the prenup terms we've discussed, and we're set. It was simpler when he was just going to leave everything to you as his widow. Amanda's laugh was cold. That would require him dying conveniently. Soon after the wedding, getting harder to arrange those kinds of accidents these days. My blood froze at this casual reference to my planned murder. David appeared equally shocked. "Jesus, Amanda, I never agreed to anything like that." "Relax." She stroked his face. "That was Plan B anyway. Plan A is working perfectly. We just need to be patient." She kissed him then, deeply and with practiced familiarity. David responded instantly, hands grasping at her wedding gown with desperate need. "We can't," she gasped, pulling back. "Not now. Everyone's waiting." "One last time before you're officially my stepmother," he growled, pushing her against the wall. She offered token resistance before surrendering, hiking up the custom Vera Wang as my son dropped to his knees before her. I stopped the recording, unable to watch more. The evidence was complete. Their betrayal, their schemes, their willingness to consider my murder, all captured perfectly. But the final act was still to come. The ceremony began with appropriate pomp. Boston's elite filled the rows, curious to witness Michael Harrington's 4th attempt at matrimony. I stood at the altar, the picture of confident anticipation. When the music changed and the doors opened, revealing Amanda on David's arm, audible murmurs of appreciation swept through the crowd. They made a striking pair, both beautiful, both exceptionally well dressed, both wearing expressions of appropriate solemnity that only I could recognize as masks covering panic. Step by careful step, my son delivered my bride-to-be to the altar. As he placed her hand in mine, our eyes met briefly, father and son locked in a silent battle spanning decades. I smiled. He blanched. The ceremony proceeded according to script until the minister reached the critical juncture. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. I had specifically requested this traditional line be included, much to Amanda's previous annoyance. Now I understood her discomfort with it. A momentary silence filled the ballroom. I squeezed Amanda's hands gently, reassuringly, before releasing them and turning to face our guests. "Actually," I said clearly, my voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent room, "I have something to say." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Amanda's face registered alarm, quickly masked with nervous laughter. "Michael, darling, that's not how this works." "On the contrary," I replied calmly. "This is exactly how it works when the groom discovers his bride has been sleeping with his son since before the engagement." The collective gasp was theatrical in its perfection. Amanda's face drained of color. In the front row, David half rose from his seat, then sank back down as if his legs had given out. "Michael, what are you saying?" Amanda hissed, reaching for my arm. "You're having some kind of breakdown." I stepped away from her touch. No breakdown, just clarity. Finally, turning to address the shocked audience, I continued with remarkable steadiness. I apologize for bringing you all here under false pretenses. There will be no wedding today. Instead, consider this my public announcement, that both Amanda Chen and my son David are terminated from Harrington Capital, effective immediately." The ballroom erupted in chaos. Amanda's mask of shocked innocence slipped, replaced by cold fury. "You can't prove anything," she snarled under her breath. In response, I nodded to Marlowe at the back of the room. The lights dimmed, and the massive screen intended for a romantic photo montage during the reception flickered to life. "Actually, I can," I replied as selected footage from their presidential suite encounter began playing. Nothing explicit, but their conversation about waiting 2 years, arranging my accident, and defrauding me came through with perfect clarity. Watching Amanda and David realize their complete defeat as their own voices condemned them provided a satisfaction more intense than any business victory I'd ever experienced. Guests watched in horrified fascination, phones raised to capture the spectacular implosion of Michael Harrington's 4th wedding. Security arrived to escort the stunned pair out as I addressed the crowd one final time. "The reception will continue, as planned. The bar is open. Consider it my thank you for helping me dodge this particular bullet." Remarkably, nearly 200 guests stayed for the reception. Boston's elite couldn't resist the opportunity to witness the aftermath of the scandal of the decade. I moved among them with grim composure, accepting awkward condolences and deflecting, probing questions with practiced ease. "Always knew there was something off about her," Philip commented as we stood watching guests attack the seafood tower that would have been my wedding feast. "But with your son? That's Shakespearean." "More Greek tragedy than Shakespeare," I corrected, sipping champagne that now tasted flat. Though I suppose I avoided the truly tragic ending they had planned for me. Later that night, alone in the honeymoon suite I'd booked for Amanda and myself, I removed my 3rd wedding ring, the one I hadn't yet replaced with a 4th, and studied it in the dim light. 3 marriages, 3 failures, though none as spectacular as today's non-event. My phone buzzed with a text from Marlowe. "C&H are packing up from their respective apartments. Being watched as requested. Lawyer confirms all termination paperwork processed." Justice had been swift. Amanda's termination activated clauses in her employment contract requiring repayment of her substantial signing bonus. David's firing triggered the inheritance contingencies we'd just amended. Both would leave with nothing but their personal possessions and the clothes on their backs. Another message appeared, from David. "You've made your point. This isn't over." I didn't bother responding. He was right, of course. The damage to our already fragile relationship was now irrevocable, but he'd learned what I'd learned through 3 divorces. Everything ends, eventually. The only question is, who controls the narrative when it does? Amanda never contacted me directly, though her lawyer made futile attempts to challenge her termination. The prenuptial agreement she'd signed with my recent amendments was ironclad. The morality clause she'd agreed to, without careful reading, specified that any sexual relationship with another Harrington Capital employee, particularly one related to me by blood, nullified all financial claims. The story dominated Boston gossip for weeks. I declined all interview requests, issued no statements, and returned to work as if nothing had happened. Reputation management experts I consulted recommended this approach. The narrative would eventually shift to make me either a sympathetic figure or a cautionary tale, depending on how I handled the aftermath. 3 months later, I sold Harrington Capital to our largest competitor for $4.2 billion, taking only my personal clients with me to form a smaller, more exclusive wealth management boutique. The sale denied David any possibility of future control while securing my financial legacy beyond anyone's reach. I heard through mutual connections that he and Amanda remained together, moving to New York to escape the humiliation that followed them in Boston. Whether their relationship was genuine or merely a trauma bond forged in mutual destruction, I couldn't say. Perhaps they truly loved each other. More likely, they simply had nowhere else to go after burning their bridges so spectacularly. Tonight, exactly 1 year after the wedding that wasn't, I'm sitting in my new penthouse overlooking the Charles River. The space is smaller than my previous home, deliberately so. I've been downsizing methodically, shedding the excess that accompanied each marriage and divorce. The third ring sits in a box with its two predecessors, mementos of lessons painfully learned. There will be no fourth ring. Some patterns, once recognized, don't need repeating. My phone buzzes with a text from my daughter from my second marriage, Catherine, who remained close despite her mother's bitterness. She's the only family connection I've maintained. "Dinner still on for Friday?" she asks. "Absolutely," I reply. "Bringing someone special I'd like you to meet." Her response is instantaneous. "Dad, after everything? Who is she?" I smile at her assumption. "Not romantic. Professional. New CEO for the foundation." The Harrington Foundation was born from the ashes of last year's disaster, a philanthropic venture focused on supporting children of divorce and broken families. My attempt at creating meaning from decades of personal failure. The woman Catherine will meet isn't a potential wife. She's 62, brilliant, and refreshingly unimpressed by my wealth. As the foundation's newly appointed executive director, she'll control more of my assets than any wife ever did, but with proper governance, transparency, and accountability. Some might see this as surrendering, an admission that I'm incapable of sustaining a marriage. I see it differently. After 3 failed marriages and 1 catastrophic near miss, I've finally recognized that intimacy and legacy don't have to be intertwined. I can create meaning without risking my heart, my business, or my relationship with what family I have left. The third ring taught me the most valuable lesson. Sometimes the pattern itself is the problem. Breaking it doesn't mean giving up. It means evolving. And at 55, I'm finally learning how to grow without repeating the same circular path that led me through 3 weddings and back to solitude. There's a certain peace in acceptance. No fourth ring will ever join the collection. Instead, I'll build something lasting that can't be undermined by betrayal or divided in divorce proceedings. The foundation will be my legacy, not another failed marriage, not another battle with a child who sees me as the enemy, not another expensive lesson in trust, misplaced. Sometimes the most powerful choice isn't trying again with renewed hope. Sometimes it's recognizing that some roads were never meant to be traveled in the first place. I close the box containing the 3 rings and return it to my safe. Like artifacts from another life, they've served their purpose, teaching me, finally, to break the cycle and forge a different path forward. No fourth ring, just the wisdom hard-earned from the first 3.